I was moving from Texas to Kansas in an office that did not have a window. Naturally, I wanted to create my own window. I bought one of those mirror windows with paints on them and wanted to make it pretty with some artwork. I approached Rochelle, who is a trained counselor and an artist. She agreed to guide me and nurture my creativity. She instructed that I bring objects from my house that meant something to me. On the day of our collaborative project, we started by talking about my objects and the backstories. I let go of not knowing why we were doing this, how these objects will be used in the art project, or what my narratives have to do with this project. Even though these questions popped up in my head, and even though I'm a teacher pleaser, I told my anal, self-judgmental, overachiever self to go on a vacation. It was much later that I realized that this process was deeply contemplative. And yet there was a need to not know the question, to attend to what rose in the moment in authentic surrender and vulnerability. This was similar to a poem I read by Franz Capus. It goes something like this. I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to cherish the questions themselves as if they were closed rooms or books written in a very strange tongue. Do not search now for the answers which could not be given to you because you would not be able to live them. It is a matter of living everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then, gradually, without noticing it, one distant day, live right into the answer. As we paste objects on the window pane quite intuitively, Rochelle asks me how my weekend was, and I remember that my Facebook feed that weekend was full of stories about a young black man named Trayvon Martin being shot to death by George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watchman. Today, this pattern of black men, children, boys killed by white law enforcement officials has not subsided. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and most recently Walter Scott, all killed by white police officers. I have been asked, but you're not black, why does this bother you? Because of our shared humanity, because this is a collective struggle, and because until all of us are free, none of us are free. So when I'm walking in a defiant manner in my neighborhood, located in the rich part of town where I bought a relatively expensive house inexpensively, I'm at unease with myself, that perhaps someone will see me and think I do not belong. Perhaps a neighborhood watchman will come by and ask me, "May I help you in any way?" And it is with myself that I'm at war first, that I too have bought into the discourse, that my presence is questionable. And in resistance to that discourse, I'm walking with a defiant stance, and that defiance masks a pain of knowing that no matter how long I stay in this country, pay taxes, buy property, educate its citizens, my presence could still be unsettling, offensive for some people to want to erase or marginalize me. We paint with our fingers, mixed up colors dripping onto the glass, frame, paints bleeding into each other. In this moment of contemplative storytelling and art building, I feel whole, even with my fragmented narratives. This is when I decide that I should bring this work to my scholarly spaces. Rochelle tells me to think of the crepe paper as an organic connection between the paints, frames, and hidden stories. My mother's face looks back at me. The face when she was 18 years old, trusting her parents as she was married to a man she did not know, unable to take the pain of being beaten, bruised, abused, cheated on. She went through a divorce, a process that took her nearly 7 years in Kolkata, India in the 70s. I cover up Mom some, perhaps to protect her, perhaps to recreate this agentic self, to offer my mom modesty with a crepe covering as if it was a sari draped over her. I tear up the crepe sari. It doesn't have to conform. It can be immodest, elegant, bratish, reflect back a distorted view because I'm crumpling it up, creating many folds. It cuts across frames, falls off, and sticks wherever it wants to. I can now only see the crepe as a sari. The red gold accented colored crepe reminds me of the sari I wore for my own wedding. We put objects on the glass while moving through more fragmented narratives. The pieces, the lens, the paint, the torn sari flowing and falling over culminate at this point where I cannot imagine a survey, an experimental design, or even a traditional form of qualitative research would have been sufficient to trigger these insights. Rochelle holds up the mirror window smiling at me. What do you think? I'm spellbound looking at it. Not that I think I'm some great artist or anything, but I'm at once drifted into so many parts of my life. Figure 8 on the frame represents infinite possibilities, exceeding the boundary for me. Labyrinth reminds me that women of color often experience an imposter syndrome in academia and find it difficult to trust and claim their spaces. Peace signs remind me to be contemplative and find my center. Childhood pictures remind me not to lose my passion for curiosity, awe, and discovery. This project was organic. The stories that I identified as rising to the surface were not stories that responded to a specific research purpose with questions and a systematic line of inquiry proposed for knowledge to be extracted, replicated, and disseminated. So, what can we produce when we operate outside of our known structure of research? Rochelle and I talk afterwards, and she tells me this.
For me, those are layered on top of this image here. And although it's an image that ultimately comes from a place of identity for you, because we've had conversations over it, now it has strong emotional value for me as well.
Wonderful.